it died. We'll see what happens tonight. And we're studying first and foremost, the question of what nusach habracha we should recite on the mitzvah of shofar. And we have basic machlokas here. We'll try to line up the shita so we see who holds what. But basically, the machlokas is going to be whether or not we make the bracha on the tekiah or on the shmir. Now, in general, we could say by way of introduction that when Chazal established a bracha on a mitzvah, the bracha should reflect what? The Maisa mitzvah. Because everything in Hilchas brachos, when it comes to mitzvahs, is on the Maisa. And that's called over le'asiyosan. So everything focuses on the asiyah. And now the question is, where is the asiyah in the case of shofar? One could argue that there is no asiyah, which would be very interesting. I don't know if we have too many mitzvahs that fit that category. That description.
Mitzvahs defined as shmiyah.
Correct. If the mitzvah is shmiyah, I don't know if there's a ma'isa b'kumah. I don't know if you can call shmiyah a ma'isa. So the pella is, according to those Rishonim, and we're going to talk about the Rambam at the head of the pack, and this is the Rambam in many, many different places. The Rambam reiterates over and over again that the bracha is on the shmir, which means that the ma'isa mitzvah is the shmir. But again, I don't know. I'm very uncomfortable in categorizing shmir as a ma'isa mitzvah, but I don't have another option. I will soon see that the Rambam in Tshuva compares the tekiah to building a sukkah, or to doing an agad, putting together the 3 out of the 4 minim. I mean, there is a Yerushalmi that says that you make a bracha of shechiyanu on putting together the sukkah or the daled minim, but that's certainly not a mitzvah unto itself. How would you classify or describe building a sukkah? A hechsher mitzvah. So it's not part of the mitzvah. You would never make a bracha on a hechsher mitzvah. The Rambam compares the tekiah of shofar to the building of a sukkah.
Is there a shechiyanu that someone says that after you build it, you say, you also do it?
Yeah, because the shechiyanu is on the creation of the sukkah, but you connect it to the moed itself. We'll talk about that, as a separate topic.
Well, but what I'm saying is, we do it anyway when it starts up. And we say the bracha before we do that.
What, the shechiyanu? Our meaning is not to make shechiyanu until Leil HaSukkos. Yeah.
No, sorry, facts. Well, what's the option of saying the bracha before or after? So
again, the Yerushalmi is of the opinion that you make the bracha when you build the sukkah. Shechiyanu.
No.
So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
And in Mitzvah Shem, if we'd have a separate shir about shechiyanu, that would be relevant.
Okay, well, going back to
would you mind? How you doing? It's just very difficult when there are.
So with the type, sorry.
Oh, so let's get back to shofar.
Yes, so we do it anyway. But what are the other options?
Right. So the options are.
Yes, I understand.
So do you have these pages that David was kind enough? So I'm not saying we would go through every single line inside together, but certainly at the beginning to line up the shitas here on the issue of what is the nusach habracha, because we're going to see many different nafkaminas here that are reflected by the nusach habracha. The nusach habracha is what you call big deal. You know what I mean? Why make a big deal about the nusach habracha? This nusach, that nusach. It seems very technical and relatively, shall I say, insignificant. But we'll see that the Rishonim, in analyzing the issue of the nusach habracha, they see in it much more than just the technicality of how to make the bracha. So, for example, if you take a look in Rabbeinu Tam, which is quoted by the Rosh in the 4th parak, he says, Yesh levarech al tekiah shofar. So it means that you should make the bracha on the tekiah. So if I had a whiteboard, or if somebody wouldn't mind, creating a scorecard here for me, so we have Rabbeinu Tam, the brachas on the Tekiah, and then we're going to add a whole bunch of other Rishonim to Rabbeinu Tam. But on the other side, we have quoted by the Rosh, the Rav Yah. So we have two Bali Atosvos that are at loggerheads. The Rav Yah is quoting the Yerushalmi, and according to Yerushalmi, the bracha is Lishmoa b'kol shofar, as opposed to Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam has the bracha on the Tekiah shofar. The Rav Yah has it on the Shmiya. And then we have the Bahag. He also agrees that the bracha is Lishmoa b'kol shofar. So the Bahag is together with the Rav Yah. And he says that there's a contrast here, which we have to try to understand. It's not easy, between Mikra Megillah and Tekiah Shofar. So that in Mikra Megillah, the mitzvah is the Kriyas HaMegillah. That's the Maisa mitzvah. And therefore the bracha is going to be al Mikra Megillah. But in the case of Tekiah Shofar, the mitzvah is what? Shmias Kol Shofar. And therefore the bracha is going to be on the Shmiya and not on the Tekiah. So you see where he has a parallel between Tekiah Shofar and Mikra Megillah. And he says that if the mitzvah of Shofar would be Tekiah, like Kriya, then just like in Megillah the bracha is on the Mikra, so too in Tekiah, in Shofar the mitzvah, the bracha would be on the Tekiah. Do you see where the Rishonim here are dealing with much more than just a technical issue? They're really getting down to brass tacks about how to define the mitzvah. So much so that the Bahag is going to prove that the mitzvah Shmiya from a Gemara on Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis. If you don't mind opening up the Gemara for me.
Is there no problem?
Maybe you don't mind. Chav Ches. What do you say?
There's no. I mean, the concept is the same. There's no problem with comparing the Rasa to Divrei Sefer.
Right. That's not the issue.
That is the issue. I understand that.
Right. The issue is how to define the mitzvah. And the Rav Yah and the Bahag, they're going to prove without a shadow of a doubt to the mitzvah Shmiya. How do they prove it? Because the Gemara tells us, Hatokea lebar lo yotz. What does that mean? Like, for example, in modern terms, we would talk about a miklat. Let's say you were blowing shofar in a bomb shelter. Or I don't know if you ever visited Theresienstadt, where the Nazis murdered 30,000 Jews a day. And they somehow the Jews were able to create a little shul subterranean, and the Nazis didn't know about it. And they blew shofar. And you could see that today. It's a small shul, very, very meragesh. In any event, so what happens is, the Gemara says that when you blow a shofar inside a bar, then what happens is the sound of the shofar, the natural sound of the shofar, bounces off the side of the bar, and what rebounds is called the echo, kol havara. It's not the original sound. And the Gemara says you're not yotze the mitzvah of shofar. Perhaps if you're standing right next to the tokea and you hear immediately before it bounces off the wall, and this is the whole issue of people with hearing aids. Yeah, because they're electrical sounds, and apparently, again, I don't know enough about the science of it. You could Google it, but apparently the sound that the person hears is not the direct sound, but rather an electric sound. And that's like a kol avara.
Well, like microphone. Does it visit the microphone in the
Microphone also might be a problem. So that's the issue here of lishmoa b'kol shofar. How do we prove that tekiah is not enough? After all, in the case of a bar, did he do the ma'aseh tekiah?
Yeah.
Chaser mashu b'tekiah? As a ma'aseh tekiah? No. The chisaron is where? In the shmiya. You didn't hear the kol shofar, you called the kol havara. So you see clearly that you have to hear the shofar. And this is going to be a kasha that's going to create tremendous challenges for us to defend the Shita Rabbeinu Tam. And keep in mind, it's not just Rabbeinu Tam. Take a look at the Shiltei Giborim in the name of the Ri'az. And he says the Mevarech al Tkiya Shofar. So now in your list, we have Rabbeinu Tam and also whom? The Riyaz. V'chein das Smag. Whoa, the Sefer Mitzvahs Gedolos. I think his name was Kusi, right? What was his last name? Yeah, so now we have three heavy Rishonim who say that the bracha is on the Tkiya Shofar. The Tur is of a different opinion, but he says that for Omeid Atokel Litkah Tzarich Sheyitka Ma'umal. Okay, so the Tkiya we're going to derive from the Mitzvah of Sphere. So Omer has to be Ba'amida. Fine. And again, all the emphasis is on whom? On the Tokeya.
No, he says Lishma kosher.
Correct. So he's going to disagree with this opinion, but first he presents that opinion. So he presents that view, which he himself rejects, but that view holds that Kodev Sheyitka Yivarech. Oh, here's where he disagrees. He says Lishma kol shofar lo litkoa. The lav b'tkiya talia milsa el b'shmiya. Do you hear? Again, I can't overemphasize enough that the Rishonim here are not dealing with some sort of secondary technical issue about how to formulate the bracha. They are really getting into the very definition of the mitzvah of shofar. And therefore, according to the Tur, as we saw earlier in the Ravya, the mitzvah and the mitzvah itself is shmiya, lishmar kol shofar. And lav b'tkiya talia milsa. Again, what do you mean lav b'tkiya? We said the tokel and tochabar is lo yotza. I mean, that would seem to indicate that b'tkiya talia milsa, you need a tkiya. But the answer is that there was a tkiya, but he's not yotza because there was no shmiya. And I don't know exactly how Rabbeinu Tam and those who hold like Rabbeinu Tam are going to explain that. But it's not just Rabbeinu Tam, it's now Rabbeinu Tam the Riyaz and the Smag. Hatokel tochabar lo yotza. Fine. Then he gets into a discussion about Shechiyanu and the Seder HaTkiyos. Fine. Interesting, by the way, I don't know if we should. This is a way of really getting off topic if we want to, but he has a discussion here about Shechiyanu on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Right? And he writes here, just 1 second. Kosav read over Posheru Shemashlim. Okay, fine. If one person did not succeed in blowing all the tkiyos, so that we could bring in a second string from the bullpen and a third string and a fourth string, and the original bracha is fine. So I don't understand why the original bracha is fine. Let's say the second string tokeya was brought in to replace the first string. He didn't hear the bracha. I would think that he has to recite the bracha. So he answers, no, he doesn't have to recite the bracha. So even if you're an abstention, you're not there, the bracha is chal on behalf of the tzibur, and you're part of the tzibur. I mean, that requires a lot of analysis. I don't understand it. Now, the truth is that in the next paragraph, he gets back to the issue of Shechiyanu, and he says on the third line of that paragraph that starts in Mevarech, he says, Rabosav, Lo hayu omrim zman b'yom sheni. So in other words, we require Shechiyanu on the first day, but not on the second day. And that's the Tur in the name of Rashi, who's quoting Rabosov. And many Rishonim hold that on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we do not recite Shechiyanu. Aval Ius Virule, he himself holds that Tzorech Lomar Zman Gam B'Yom Sheni. Now, what would be the argument against Shechiyanu and Yom Sheni?
Not the first time doing the mitzvah.
Oh, so there are two machayvim of Shechiyanu. There's Zman, the Kedushas Hayom, and there's the new mitzvah, like mezuzah, whatever it is, Pidyon Haben, that comes from time to time.
Just like you did the previous night.
So if you're talking about the mitzvah, then you're right. He was already yotze the mitzvah, except for this year. So he would not make a bracha on the mitzvah of shofar on the second day. But if the machayev is kedushas hazman, then, for example, Yontif Sheni Shel Golios, when you sit in Sukkah or take the lulav on the second day of Yontif Sheni, do you make a shechiyot or do you not?
You do.
You do.
Oh,
So why should the second day Rosh Hashanah be the same?
Shoshana might be different.
Correct. So you're gonna have to introduce the concept of Yom HaRichta. So now the question is, what is Yom HaRichta? There are two ways of understanding Yom HaRichta. One way is to take it literally, that there are 48 hours of one Yechida Achas of Kedushas Hazman. And therefore, once you make the Shechiyot at the beginning of that Achida, the beginning of that unit of 48 hours, there's no room for another Mechayev Zman, because it's all one Zman. But there's another way of understanding Yom HaRichta. Yom HaRichta means that they were masaking the second day as a vadai, not as a suffix. And if that be the case, it has its own independent Kedushas Hazman, albeit with a vadai. And then you would make a Shechiyanu even on the second day, because the Zman would be Mechayev, even if the Shofar is not Mechayev. Okay, so I'm just pointing that out. The Rambam holds in three different places. Hilchos Shofar, Perek Aleph, Halachal, Mitzvah Seishel Torah Lishmoa. What is the mitzvah? The mitzvah is Lishmoa. And therefore, according to the Rambam, the bracha is going to reflect the fact that the mitzvah is the Shmiya. And indeed, the Rambam requires what kind of shofar? Kafuf. Do you see that on the second line? I mean, the Ravid goes to town over here. The Ravid Asoga says, okay, it's nice to have a shofar kafuf, but that's only lechatchila. You get the impression from the Rambam that kafuf is likuva. It's absolutely indispensable. And only a shofar kafuf is kosher. So let's say you have, for example, a shofar of a Yael. How do you say Yael in English? A gazelle or something like that. So it's straight. And therefore, the Rambam would hold you not yotze. The Ravid would say it's not the best shofar to take, but you are yotze. So why is kafuf likuva according to the Rambam?
Especially if he holds it shmiya or a matter.
Right.
Even the Meisatzkiya, you can say the shofar is the Chefesh Mitzvah.
I mean, we have a power as well.
The Rambam goes on to say in Sefer Mitzvahs, tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Now, I don't have the Rambam in front of me, but the Rambam writes that the bracha is lishmoa kol shofar. I think I have it here. Let's see. He quotes it of Mursky. Give me a second. I don't see it, but maybe it is here.
Yeah, it's Perek Gimel a year.
Oh, very good. Asher kitshanu mitzvosav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Because of a Rambam, I don't know why he doesn't footnote it. Echad omeid u'mevarch lishmoa kol shofar. Yeah, I don't know why he doesn't. That should have been added to here, but I didn't add a footnote. Okay, so we have the Rambam in Mishnah Torah, we have the Rambam in Sefer Mitzvahs, and now we get to the Rambam in Shuvah. So what does the Rambam say in Shuvah? She'ela ma chiluk yesh bein lishma kol shofar bein al tkiya shofar. It sounds like he's referring to the bracha. Do you get that impression?
What else did he ask me?
Yeah. Tshuva, hachiluk gadol b'neihem. Don't think that we're dealing with nuances and technicalities in terms of how to publish a siddur or machzor for Rosh Hashanah and what should be the nusach of the bracha. But we're really getting down to a chiluk gadol b'neihem. Ki ha-mitzvah miyuchedes. This, I think, is a bad translation. You know, the Rambam wrote this in Arabic. I think it should be ki ha-mitzvah ha-mugderes, I think it should be. You know, he's defining the mitzvah. Eina ha-tkiya, Ela bishmir. Now he adds the word sagi. I don't know what the word sagi is doing there, but basically he's saying that forget about the tekiah. You know, the tekiah is just a way of producing a kol shofar, but the mitzvah is what? Is shmir. The imhoisa mitzvah tekiah.
He's saying the mitzvah is tekiah, then everybody should blow for themselves.
Right, oh yeah, you're a step ahead of me.
Yeah.
But what does he mean when he says Ella b'shmia sagi? I don't know what he means by sagi. Sagi means without a tekiah?
I don't have to do the tekiah myself. I have to only do the shmir myself. And therefore,
So it means shmir b'atzmo sagi.
yeah.
As far as atzmo is concerned, he doesn't require a tekiah. Okay, maybe. For this, you have to be an expert in Arabic, probably. All right. Dim hoisa mitzvah tekiah. Hayitzara kol echad v'echad litkol b'atzmo kol shechayev kol adam b'lulav u'b'sukkah. We could add the word b'atzmo. VMK, meaning if you would tell me, like Rabbeinu Tam, and we'll see in the Sefer Maneh, that it's not just Rabbeinu Tam and the Mahag, but it's a whole bunch of, and the Riyaz, excuse me, but it's a whole bunch of other Rishonim, and a very widespread minhag to be mavarch on the tekiah. So now you're going to tell me that the mitzvah is tekiah. So then, just like in the cases of lulav and sukkah, he has to sit in the sukkah himself. He has to take the lulav himself, and he can't have what?
Can't someone else before you.
Right, he can't appoint a shliach. So too, in the case of tekiah, there's no shlichus. What do we call this in the lumdishic jargon of the yeshiva world, based on a ketzos? Mitzvah shebegufo. This would be great. Imagine if I could make you my shliach to wear tefillin for me, to sit in sukkah for me, for the daven for me. I wouldn't have to do anything. I could work the stock market, 24/7. You do all the mitzvahs for me. No. There's something called a mitzvah shebegufo. You have to sit in sukkah yourself. You have to take the lulav yourself. And therefore, says Ram, you'd have to do the tekiah yourself. You can't appoint the shliach to do the tekiah. It's a mitzvah shebegufo.
Is that the difference in Lamed and Al?
Could be related to that. He says, according to you guys who hold that the mitzvah is tekiah, then if you didn't blow the shofar yourself, you weren't yotzei. And furthermore, if you hold that the mitzvah is tekiah, and yet we know that if he didn't hear the tekiah, the Rabbi gives a very interesting example. He puts in flents. I don't know if you know what flents are. Anyway, some sort of earplugs. Then he's not yotzei the mitzvah of shofar. Well, if you hold the mitzvah tekiah, you did the tekiah, and certainly at tokel l'toch habar, you did the tekiah. Why weren't you yotzei? V'ein hadin ka. And here we can add because hatokel l'bar lo yotzei. Ki mitzvah yashmiya v'lo tekiah. But rather, if you plugged in earphones, earplugs, or you heard the secondary sound of the shofar as it bounces, or blah blah blah, you're not yotzei because the mitzvah is shmiya. Ukmoshes b'sukkah ha-mitzvah ha-sukkah mitzvah yeshiva v'lo asiya. Interesting. As I said before, he compares tekiah to asiyas ha-sukkah. Or in lulav, hadatila is v'lo b'ogdon. He says the mitzvah of lulav is to take the lulav, not ogdon ha-lulav. Ogdon ha-lulav is only to prepare the lulav. Kach, so too zu mitzvah yashmiya. And what's the tekiah then? The tekiah is not to be yotzei the mitzvah. The tekiah is only to generate what? A kol shofar. So how many nafkavinas do we have now? We have 2 nafkavinas, maybe even 3. Number 1, did he hear the shofar? If you hold the mitzvah's tekiah, he was yotzei, even though he didn't hear the shofar. But if you hold the shmiya, you have to hear those. Then we have nafkavina gabi v'nusach habracha. Then we have an nafkavina legabe shlichus. If you hold that the mitzvah is tekiah, no shlichus. It's a mitzvah shebegufa. If you hold the mitzvah shmiya, then as long as you did the shmiya, that's the mitzvah shebegufa. So if you heard somebody else's tekiah, you were yotzei. So how many nafkavinas do we have? 3. What's the 4th nafkamina? So I don't know, this didn't make it to the pages, I don't think. But this is the Rambam in Perek Aleph Milchas Shofar Halacha Gimel.
Shofar Gozel.
Shofar Gozel. Shofar Gozel should talk about What would you say if you were guessing the next word? Yechiel Shlita, how are you? What would you say? Somebody stole a shofar. Well, if you steal a lulav, can be yotze with the lulav? No, that's absurd. We spent a lot of time on this.
A year ago.
It's a year ago. Oh my gosh, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
It's mitzvah haba be'avera, which is a psul d'oraisa. The Gemara derives it from behemas kodesh. If he steals a behemah and he's magnish. So therefore, we should assume that if he steals a shofar, he's not yotze. But the Rambam holds that what? Listen carefully, yotze. She'eda mitzvah el b'shmias hakol. Afal pishlo nogabo v'lo bio hashomea yotze. Imagine I can hold the shofar at a distance, blow into the shofar. I didn't even touch the shofar, and I was yotze. So Reb Chaim explains that mitzvah b'aver is a psul nechefta, and which chefta? The chefta of the mitzvah. Well, what is the chefta of the mitzvah? Well, if the tekiah is the mitzvah, then the chefta of the mitzvah is the shofar. But if the shmiya is the mitzvah, then what's the chefta of the mitzvah?
Yeah.
The kol shofar. And kol ain't bo mishum gezel, the Rambam writes. You can't steal a kol.
So we said that there's no shiur for shofar. If it's from here and dachas.
And that would also perhaps support the Rambam.
Yes.
Let's think about that.
I
for a
don't
second.
remember that. What?
Let me just think.
Yeah,
Shofar shalom.
It doesn't apply to shofar. It does not apply to shofar. Oh, it doesn't.
That's not fault. I don't remember.
That's good. Shofar shalom.
Right, lulav shila and itachas is possible.
Yeah,
Respect the
of
shear,
course.
but it doesn't have a shear.
There's no
Yeah. But you know what? On second thought, you have to know the sugya on daf chavav. I think about the shear of shofar. What's the shear of shofar? There is a shear of shofar. Yeah, it has to be enough that there's a little bit comes out of it. Yeah. So you're saying to say mechta shear. Excellent. So we have now how many nafkaminas? I lost the count. 5.
So shofar shalom would be the fifth.
Would be the fifth. You know, we started with it, what we thought was like a secondary technical nuanced issue about the Nuska Brach. We ended up with 5 nafkaminas.
But if we go to the Megillah.
50 says this Ketuse Mechta Shiur and is Shofar Shalom Avodah Zarah. What do you say?
If we go to Mikra Megillah, a person who reads the Megillah doesn't hear, he'll be answered. Because, I mean,
It seems like he would be Yotze. And we'll take a look at the Sefer HaManig. Do you have that page, Sefer HaManig?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm not jumping ahead of myself. Okay, good.
Oh, there we go.
It's not obvious the Gemara about shofar shalom avodah zarah shalom.
Right.
The other 2 days, whether you can be Yotze,
It's not obvious in the Gemara.
about Shofar Shalom Avodah Zarah.
There's Yosef.
So maybe it's totally in this machlokas for Bein Tam and in the Rama, maybe. Well, all right. Well, let's add it as one of the machlokas, one of the nafkas.
1.5.
I just want, not in the Lachil, more like, I guess, from the Machshavah side of it, but in Hilchos Tshuvos, Rambam talks about the shofar. It's like, Urish Nimi Mishnatchem. The matrav the shofar is to hear is the hashpah that the kol has on the person to do tshuva. So that's why the hikmatut is in the kol, is in the shmiyah.
So that'll be a further proof that the Rambam is very consistent. It's all hearing the kol, and it's supposed to arouse you to do tshuva.
And you can explain the difference between that and, let's say, the approach of Megillah, because Megillah is persumanes. So if I don't specifically hear it,
right? The kriya itself.
Yeah, the fact that there's this assembly of people and somebody shouting out.
So
let
me wait with that point for just a minute to the Sefer HaManik. I just wanted to add one thing. The Rambam in the Tshuva, at the end, he writes, "V'tzarech levarech lishmar kol shofar k'moshe mevarchim leishev basukah v'lo laso sukkah." Interesting. The Rambam is very consistent. He's saying that if the mitzvah tekiah, then that parallels asiyah in sukkah.
Right.
And if it's asiyah in sukkah, you don't make a bracha on asiyah in sukkah, because asiyah sukkah is only one, an extra mitzvah.
Also, the ikar of sukkah is the experience of living in the sukkah.
Right.
The experience you're supposed to have. It's
the yeshiva b'sukkah. It's not the asiyah sukkah.
Right.
So I would like to add 2 nafkaminas and maybe even a third, which would jack up the number to 8 nafkaminas, maybe, but at least to 7. And that is Chere Shota V'Kata. The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah Daf Chav Tes says that if you hear the shofar from a Chere Shota V'Kata, lo yotz. Why does that depend upon the Machlokes, Rabbeinu Tam, as we call it? And it's not just Rabbeinu Tam, we added the Riyaz, and then Sefer HaManik is going to add a whole bunch of them, and the Ram.
Because if it's Shmiya, then it shouldn't matter.
Yeah, who blows it? Well, what difference does it make if the blower?
There's a chetz of kol shofar.
Yeah, if the blower is La Bar Chiyuva, fine, he's La Bar Chiyuva, so his tekiah cannot qualify as a tekiah. But the kol shofar is the identical kol shofar, whether he reached his 13th birthday and he has Shtei Saros or he hasn't reached Shtei Saros. What difference does it make in terms of the kol shofar? So that's going to be the famous kasha of this Sfas Emes, which you have here in the 3rd page that David sent us. But first I want to do the Sefer HaManik. So this is number Tes over here on page 84. And he starts with Rav Haigon, Levarach Lishma Kol Shofar. And he, the Sefer HaManik, accepts without any hesitations the sheet of Rav Haigon. The Yeshlom She'en Lo Levarach L'Tkoa B'Shofar Al Tkiya Shofar Kiminag Tzarfas. So look at that, the Chachmei Tzarfas, according to the testimony of the Sefer HaManik, they made the bracha Levarach L'Tkoa B'Shofar. And that's Rabbeinu Tam from Chachmei Tzarfas. Kamo Al Mikra Megillah. Again, just like the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah is Mikra, so to the mitzvah of Shofar is Tkiya. Mipnei Shemegillah Yotzi Ba B'Kriya Levada. Afal Pishlo Shmiel Yozno. Somebody asked me, who was it? You know? Yeah. Are you Yotze the mitzvah of Kriyas HaMegillah without hearing the Megillah? He says yes. I don't know if everybody agrees with him. I don't know. Kedei Isa B'Brachos. I don't know. He doesn't tell you what daf in Brachos. Maybe you could look that up in Google. Nimtza Shakriya Ikar. Voltkiyas Shofar. Now the Sefer HaManik is arguing against the Minik Tzarfas. Tzarch Sheyashmiya Sheyishma Tokea Kol Shofar V'lo Shoma Lo Yotza. Very similar to the Rambam's argument based on the sugya of Hatokea L'Toch Habar Lo Yotza. Kidamrin Hasam. I wrote myself a note on the side of Chesam and Beis. I hope I'm right. Zimnin de Mafik Reisha V'Kati Shofar B'Bar. So he's blowing by bending down into the bar, but his head is vertical above the level of the top of the bar, and the shofar is down below, and he's blowing the shofar. So he's only going to hear the kol havara, and he's not yotze. Nimtza. This is line, what is it, 7? Nimtza shashmiya ikar v'lo atkiya. Okay, here I got lost. Here's where I need your help. She'ein kavanas halev tluya ba, and I think the word ba is referring to the tkiya. Aval b'megillah, havanas halev tolui ba, and therefore dailo b'kriya below shmiya kikriya shma. All right. Honestly, when he says kikriya shma, I don't know. I feel like crossing that out. But anyway, let's just try to figure out what he says of Ein Kavanas Alev Tluya Ba, Megillah Kavanas Alev Tluya Ba.
Somebody who's Tokea, the shear. Is he okay?
That depends on Mitzvah Srichas Kavanah or not.
Right, but as opposed to somebody who is.
But do me one favor, Yaakov, if you don't mind. Let's get to Tokea L'Shir later, and maybe that's going to be a proof to your pshat, I don't know. But how do you just teach Verta? You know, I'm looking for the teach. How do you teach these words? She'ein kavanas halev tluya ba. Is he referring to mitzvah srichas kavanah? I don't think so. Aval b'megillah shavanas halev tolui ba. You know, if you would ask me, I would have come to the opposite conclusion. that in Megillah, since Havanas Alev is totally b'shmiya, it's not enough to have kriya. What does it mean that Megillah Havanas Alev totally ba?
We don't have to have in mind.
Okay.
I'll be able to be
It's
to
okay.
No, but I'm talking about the line about Megillah. He says in Megillah Havanas Alev totally ba, and therefore dailo b'kriya, below shmiya. Again, I think it's counterintuitive. I would have said fakert. If you're telling me that Havanas Alev totally ba, I would say it's totally in shmiya.
Right.
I mean, again, reading the Megillah is just a technical, external, perfunctory action. That's not going to give you, bayom mahem basman say. You know what I mean? The kiyum of Pirsum Hanesh should be through the shmiya, unless he means like what you said before, that if other people could hear my kriya, dailo b'kriya, because Havanas Alev depends upon the kriya. There's something deeper going on over here, and I can't figure it out. I'm going to leave it for the time being. Anyway, he goes on to tell you that the Yesod HaAmrami, which apparently is some area.
Siddur of Amram going?
Yeah, maybe. Oh, yeah, maybe Rav Amram going. Litkar v'shofar. So again, we had Rav Hai going who says Lishmoha, and Rav Amram going v'chein berov hamakomos ba'almania. This is in Germany. So the minig Ashkenaz v'chein etzarfatim is to make the bracha al tkiya shofar. So once again, if you have the scorecard here, it's not just Rabbeinu Tam as a voice, in the dark. There are so many who hold like Rabbeinu Tam in Sarfas and in Germans. Ach, b'provatio b'sfarad b'varch l'shmoa kol shav'chein ikar k'minag Rabbeinu Hai. Now we get to the kasha of the Sfas Emes. And he quotes this kasha in the name of the Yom Trua, Hiksha. Ha'ikar mitzvah hu l'shmoa. Okay, that reflects those poskim, the head of which is the Rama. The Mishnah says, but who cares? We have a shmi of a kol shofar. Okay, he quotes the answer of, I think his name was Rav Yaakov Chagiz, the Yom Trua, and he rejects it. He says, you're on page 3. Yeah, on page Lamed Zayin on the left, it'll say Sfas Emes, and you're in the paragraph on the left, the second paragraph from the top. And he writes, that so it's not enough that you hear the shofar from somebody else and you have in mind to be Yotze. The person who's blowing the shofar has to have in mind to be Motzi. Why is that? He says, Ein dvarav muvanin. The toli tanya below tanya. He says, you're just making the question exacerbate.
That itself is a problem. Why do you need a kavanah?
Exactly. If the mitzvah shmiya, who cares whether the mashmiya is motzi you and has kavanah to be motzi you? The lokol ikar did the boy kavanah lahotzi hashommeya al ze gufa ikar lakshuye. We should ask on this: the visa da shmiya bilvadu on mitzvah lamali kavanah lahotzi. Why does he have to kavanah to be motzi? If the mitzvah is tkiya and he's doing the tkiya and I'm not, then again the Rama would argue that his tkiya can't relate to me because the mitzvah gufa. But be that as it may, you can argue against the Rambam somehow, and you would say that he has to have in mind that he's blowing on your behalf. So his blowing is like your blowing, and therefore I understand why you need kavanas hamashmiya, kavanas hatokeh. But according to the Rambam Shita, that the mitzvah is what? Is shmiya. Why does the tokeh have to have in mind to be motzi the shomea? So all you're doing, says the Sfas Emes, is piling up another kash. So in our list of nafkaminas, I don't remember what number we're up to. Here's another nafkamina. Do we need kavanas hamashmiya? Did we have that on the list already? I don't think we had it. So Kavanas HaMashmiya would depend upon the Machlok Shim Rabbeinu Tam and the Rama. If you only Rabbeinu Tam, then you need Kavanas HaMashmiya so that the Tekiah of the Tokea will be related to the Shomea. But if you only the Mitzvah Shmiya, who cares if the Tokea had you in mind or didn't have you in mind? He did a perfectly good Tekiah, you heard the Kol Shofar, and therefore you Yotzei B'Shmiya. Now he's going back to the question of Cherishot v'Katan, and we'll see if he answers also the question of Mashmiya. The Hashmiya, just 1 second, I lost the place here. Yeah. The Tzrichem Lishmoa Kol Shofar. Let's underline the word Kol Shofar. So if a cotton blows, you didn't hear a Kol Shofar. He says, Shenasev Bo Mitzvah. A Kol Shofar has to become a chefta of a mitzvah. And he says it's not enough that the shomea makes it into a chefta of mitzvah, but the tokeh has to make it into a chefta shel mitzvah.
The blowing is different. Apparently there's something.
It's not the blowing, the sound.
He's saying that whether or not the sound qualifies kol shofar depends upon the status of the blower. The so you have to hear a true. You don't have to hear just some sound that came out of a shofar. This is what you call in the yeshivish language. It's called din versus mitzius. Are you familiar with that? He's saying that kol shofar is not a mitzius. Kol shofar is a din, is an entity. It's a legal halachic entity, and only a bar chiyuva can generate that entity called a kol shofar. Vim hoya tokea misha eno bar chiyuva like a cherishot v'katan is havi. It's as if shama kol keren bialma. He heard some sort of a sound of a horn or a trumpet. It's not a kol shofar. Wow.
But similar to
This is like a brisker chiddush here from the Sfas Emes.
the candle lit by a goy or by a custom to the whole period. If the candle is a chefta mitzvah or
Well, the guy near Hanukkah. What are you talking about near Hanukkah? What are you talking?
yeah. Someone might see it.
The story I told you about my date with that girl from Borough Park. No, you can't publicize it. Shut off. Anyway. So
you have to tell a story. You can't just do it and not tell a story.
yeah, all right. No, I mean, I came in. They were up to Adlokas Ner Chanukah. They had steps. You had to climb the steps to reach the to the Chanukiah. It was made of pure silver. It was probably worth about $50,000 then. I don't know. It was like massive. And I said to myself, "What is Zekeli Vanveyu? I'm not even sure if the Chanukiah is a chefsa shel mitzvah." When I was at YU, we didn't have Chanukiah. We took candles, we melted them onto the shelf of the window, and that's how we yotze. So maybe the candle is the chefta shel mitzvah. I don't even know if the candle is the chefta shel mitzvah. If you ask me what's the chefta shel mitzvah of Chanukah, it's the shalheves, it's the flame. Anyway, let's whatever. I just
So if we have $50,000, we should spend it on a
So you
menorah.
told her the $50,000 menorah wasn't a chefta shel mitzvah, and
I didn't tell her that, I wanted a second date, but no, just kidding.
No wonder it didn't work.
But the truth is, I found a Ravid. Did you ever hear of Moriah Publishers? They publish Kisvei Yad, and many other farms. So they published a Ksav Yad from the Ravid, and the Ravid says that you have to be very makpid to light a Chanukiah, not just the candle. Why? Because he says it's Zeichel Migdash, and in the Migdash, the nest took place in the what do you call it? The menorah. So you need a menorah Zeichel to the menorah. So Lemafreya, like 30 years earlier, now I understood why they spent $50,000 on Chanukah. Anyway, we got over that tangent. So this is the Sfas Emes. But I don't think that the Sfas Emes answered the other question. Why do we need Kavanas HaMashmiya?
it's not such an earth-shattering svara, though. I mean, like, you could have a 12-year-old kid say Kiddush, and you're not the guy's listening is not Yosef. It's the same words.
But
It's
it's
the thing. Because what he's saying it's meaningless. So if a guy's blowing a trumpet, if a guy's blowing shofar without any mashmos, he's a chayer shofar v'katan, or if like he's saying it in a way that he doesn't have any kavanah, So it has to be that the thing that's coming out of his mouth has some mitzvah quality to it.
So you're in agreement with this Sfas Emes?
Yeah, I'm saying, but it's not so earth shattering as
Okay. Okay, honestly, I came up with this far before I saw the Sfas Emes. In fact, I wrote a whole note on the side of my my sefer. But what I'm asking now, if you could focus on the following: has the Sfas Emes addressed the other kasha? The Gemara says you need kavanas hamashmiya v'ashomea. Why do you need kavanas hamashmiya? And you might say that Rambam doesn't accept that halach, but the Rambam actually codifies that. In Hilchas Shofar, the Rambam paskins yat yotzei unless you have kavanas hamashmiya.
So he has to know, can he have kavanah for, can he have random kavanah?
No, he has the kavana to be motzi the shomea.
No, but can he have random kavanah?
And this is the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Chav Ches Amid Beis, and the Rambam in Perek Beis Milchas Shofar Halacha Dal. Can you get that up for us? Perek Beis Halacha Dal. This kaven shomea lotzes v'lo niskaven atokeh lahotzio lo yotzi dechova. Do you hear that, Rabosai? How is the Sfas Emes going to explain that? The Mashmiya was interested in the kol shofar of Mitzva. He was a bar chiyuva. He could be yotze with that kol shofar, and yet somebody else cannot be yotze with that kol shofar because the Mashmiya, the Tokeh, did not have in mind to be motziir. Why not? Bishleim, according to Rabbeinu Tam Nicha, because the mitzvah is what? Is Tekiah. So you have to have the Tekiah, the Tekiah has to be related to the Shomea. So how does the Shomea dip in to the Tekiah of the Tokeh? Because the Tokeh had in mind the Shomea. Do you follow what I'm saying? There's a tziruv that integrates the Tekiah Satokeh and the Shmiyas HaShomea, because the mitzvah is not just Shmiya, but also Tekiah. But according to the Rambam, the mitzvah is Shmiya, and we have a Bar Chiyuva, and in fact, he produced a beautiful kol shofar, which he himself was yotze with that very same kol shofar, but yet somebody else is not yotze. Why not? To me, this is like a TKO. Yeah, you're Africans. I don't know if you know.
It was a very good box.
It could be we got it from you guys. I don't know. Anyway. Okay, so this I can't deal with. I don't know how to deal with this. This is like way beyond my ability. But I would like to give you a hashkafa here a little bit. Of course, my Rebbe would kill me for this, but you mentioned the little hashkafa, so I'm going to just follow your pattern, right? You blame you, I have not blamed me.
This is your Breslov side now.
This is my Breslov side. I have here, if I can only find it, a quote from Rab Nassim, the Talmud Muvak of Rabbi Nachman. Oh, I found it. If you want to make a note of it, because I want to make you guys into Breslovers, it's Likutei Halachos.
You going to Oman this week?
If you can convince my wife to let me go. I never been. I mean, I've been to Uman, but not for Rosh Hashanah. Likutei Halachos, Hilchas Nedarim, Perek Dal. And it's divided up in subcategories, Chaf He. Listen to what he says here. Ze bechinas kol shofar shetokim b'Rosh Hashanah shehu yom hazikaron ve'ikar hazikaron al yidei hashofar. That reminds us of the Gemara that we learned last week, that the shofar is kilifnai v'lifnimdam, if you remember, because it's called zikaron. And he writes the following: Ki hashofar kolu mi kol hakolo sheba'olam. What does he mean that the shofar has within it all the sounds? He says, "Me'elo litata uvitata le'elo." It goes from on top. What does on top mean? Shamayim. Down to lamata, it means the ground, the earth. Umitata li'ela. Are you following me so far? In other words, the shofar is a two-way street. The projectile of the shofar is going from two directional. Is that a good phrase?
That's not being Tokay in the bar.
What do you say?
That's not being Tokay in the bar.
I don't know about Tokay in the bar, but let's just understand what does Rav Nosson Mibreslev mean when he says that it's two ways. Listen carefully. Shah shofar hu, and I'm going to add an aleph of my own. Lahazkir es Yisrael ula oram b'tshuva. So who's blowing the shofar basically? B'bchinas uru yesheda v'shnaschen. Hashem is blowing the shofar. It's coming mila ela litata, because who's waking us up? The Eibishter is waking us up. And then he says, "V'chein hashofar hu," I added a base, "kidei lahazkir oso yisborach kaviyachol." He says to remind HaKadosh Baruch Hu sheyirachem aleinu. So who's blowing the shofar now? To ask Hashem to remember us. It's militata li'ela. Correct? Kibavur b'divrei Rabbeinu Zal b'kama pa'amim shashofar kidei sheyizkar. Who's meant to be zocher? Lanu es hakedes yitzchok she'or rachamov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in other words, the shofar has both these kolos in it. The bechina of me'ela litato, militato li'ela. Lahashlich kolo yisbarach l'knesses Yisrael. We're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be mashlich his kol to us. V'chein lehefech, lahashlich kol knesses Yisrael elav yisbarach, la'ore rachma v'laskiro schus avoseinu. Unbelievable. There are really two blowers of the shofar. There's HaKadosh Baruch who's blowing the shofar, and we are blowing the shofar. So basically, who's the tokeh and who's the shomer? Both. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is both the tokeh and the shomer, and we are also both the tokeh and the shomer. Is anybody following?
I was I'm not following.
What I'm saying is, if you're holding it's mili elu litato, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is blowing the shofar to waken us up. Uru yishayim mishnasken. On the other hand, it's militato le'ela. We're blowing the shofar to ask Hashem to remember Akedes Yitzchak, etc., Rachmi Shamayim. So one would have to say that, according to Rabbi Nosson Mibreslev, this verse are talking, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is both a tokea and a shomer. On the one hand, he's the tokea because he's blowing the shofar to wake us up. On the other hand, he, Kaviyachol, with a capital H, is a shomer because we are blowing the shofar so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu remember us, l'rachamim. Is Memela, again, al pi hashkafa. I'm not giving you a halachic answer to the present problem that I have no answer to in the Rambam. It's a kasha shein la tshuva. Why do I need the mashmiya to be motzi, to have kavanah to be motzi the shomer? And the answer is because the mitzvah of shofar is a two-directional mitzvah. I have to somehow combine a tokea with a shomer. The tokea is doing the action and we are passive. We are doing the action and Kaviyachal is passive. And therefore, to connect these two dimensions of Tkiyah Shofar, we need a kavanah of both the Tokeh and the Mashmiah. The Tokeh and the Shomer. The Mashmiah has to get the idea that he's blowing for the sake of whom? Of the Shomer. Who is blowing for the sake of Shomer? And the answer is twofold. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is blowing for the sake of Shomer. We have to hear his Tkiyah with a capital H. And we are blowing for the sake of Shomer, and we are the Tokeh, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Shomer. But it's got to be both Tokeh and Shomer. Again, this is not halachic. As I said to you, Rav Salvation would throw me out of my head for this. And I know it. What? Okay, Rabbi, so how are we doing? Do we have 5 more minutes before Myra? 4 more minutes, okay. I have here in front of me a photocopy of Rav Zevin's Ishim V'Shitot. If you could maybe take a picture of it and send it around, if you don't mind. The Iker is what I underlined here. It's called Ishim V'Shitot. He wrote many, many books.
Is that the whole thing by Shama Vesera? That's something.
That's a different article, but it's in this, well, I think it's in a different book. I think it's in L'or Aloch. Anyway, so he says the following, listen carefully, that a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chorin, Reb Chaim said, based on the Minchas Chinuch, the Rav used to say that Reb Chaim had a Minchas Chinuch on his desk. He had only 5 Sforim on his desk, I think, and one of it was a Minchas Chinuch. And the Minchas Chinuch says that a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chorin is Trey Gavri, 2 Gavras. He's a Gavra of a Ben Chorin, who would be Chayav in mitzvahs, and he's a Gavra of an Eved who's Potur, for example, for the mitzvah period of a river. And therefore, says the Minchas Chinuch, that there's no period of a rivya by a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chorin, because he would have to marry a Bas Yisrael as a Ben Chorin, that Gavra. But there's another Gavra who's an Eved, and an Eved has a relationship with a Bas Yisrael. That's called Lotzia Kadesh of Yisrael. It's a Lav Doraisa. So there's no Esei Dochalosas here claims the Minchas Chinuch because it's 2 different Gavras. When can you apply the principle of Esei Dochalosa? It's only when you have 1 Gavra. So I'm going to suggest the following. The Gemara tells us in the name of Nachman that a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chorin cannot be Motzi himself in Shofar. Why not? He could be Motzi himself in Sukkah, in Lulav, in Matzah, in every single mitzvah, but not in Shofar. The answer is because in Shofar, he's Trey Gavri. Because in Shofar, we have to have a Tokea and a Shomea. And the Tokea is a Chatzi Eved. And therefore, the Kol Shofar that the Ben Chorin Gavra is the Kol Shofar of the Eved. Or at least 50% of it.
The driving will be the same thing.
What?
I'm driving this. This comes more in the beginning, but I'm driving this.
You always jump from one topic to the other. I was enough trouble with this topic, and you're already hitting me with that dragoness. You know, Reb Chaim once came over to Reb Moshe's son, his Bechor, and he said to him, "What are you thinking about?" So Reb Moshe says, "I wasn't thinking about anything." He says, "You aren't thinking about anything?" So next time, a few months later, when Reb Chaim asked Reb Moshe, "What are you thinking about?" Reb Moshe said, "I'm thinking about an androgynous who has this, that." Okay, we'll stop here. Let's see if we can make it for Baruch. How does it look? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Yechiel, have a refuah shlema. Thanks for joining me.